Welcome, everybody, to this edition of Fortress State of Mind and the podcast.
Dre's Table.
So I'm here with my buddy Dre from Dre in the Kitchen and the podcast at Dre's Table. Am I saying that right, or is it just Dre?
Yeah, you got it. Dre's Table.
Dre's Table.
I'll talk about it in a little bit.
All right. And I've been talking to you guys a little bit about roadblocks, and we're all about talking about motivation and trying to help each other reach different points and facets in our life. And so one of the people that I bounce a lot of ideas off of and I talk to a lot is my buddy Dre here. We met, it's been a couple of years now. It's been about 2 years ago. And we've stayed in close contact and we really push each other and drive each other. So I'm going to let Dre introduce himself and talk about what he does on his channels and the many different things that Dre is cooking up in the kitchen right now.
So, okay, cool. Thank you. So my name is Dre. It's Andres, but I created Dre in the Kitchen, DITK, on YouTube, probably when the pandemic started. And then probably, I would say in August or September of this year, did I take it super seriously and realize that it's a vehicle to help many people create new memories through food, which I think, listen, many of us have childhood memories surrounded by food, right? Cool. And then Dre's Table came about where I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. So for those of you who don't know me, let me tell you a little background. So we know one another from a prior company that we worked with because both of us are no longer with that company. They shall remain nameless. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And through all of that, I healed my way out of being in network marketing for I started doing the math. I'm terrible at math. But I'll just say 13 years. And then I healed my way out of it. And Dre's Table came out through conversations that I was having with people who were getting themselves out of network marketing or figuring out that that wasn't for them. And then sort of, it's like a round table where we can just bounce ideas off whatever the topic is. And it's a safe space. So here we are.
Nice. Yeah. So I will say that Dre has been, as I watched him do things, I'm like, you know what? I really need to get back at it. And I think I know we're going to get into some, I would say some hard hitting stuff today. So full disclosure, guys, we tried to do this once already.
I have the audio, trust me.
I messed up the video recording. So this is us talking again, but I think there was a lot of good things and I thought it was worth definitely putting it on video so you can see all of our reactions as we're talking about some of the things that we discuss. So I think we get right into it and we'll just talk. So I want to talk to you guys about roadblocks, right? So the first video that I did with you guys was essentially letting you know that when you see a roadblock, it's not a stopping point. It's about how do I find my way around to the area that I'm trying to get to. But what's interesting is roadblocks can mean different things for different people, right? And I asked the question from several of you. I heard back from a couple of you. It would be really nice to hear back from you guys in the comments. A lot of you that know me personally will send me stuff on individual chats, which is cool, but let's get some stuff in the comments. Anyway, I digress. So
some good commentary.
Good commentary, yes, please. But I think it's important to talk about what roadblocks mean to us. I think, Dre, for us, you and me, we could talk about, hey, what is a roadblock for you? What's a roadblock for me? And what have been some roadblocks that have happened to us already that have stopped us from doing things? Because for me, I won't get into it right now because I want to hear from you first, but I stopped doing my videos for a while and I was going hard pretty regularly. At least once a week, I was putting stuff out.
And we spoke about that.
Yeah. So let's talk about your roadblocks. What is a roadblock for you? And
so let's start off with dictionary.com's definition of what a roadblock is, because I think sometimes some people have different interpretations, right? So according to dictionary.com, a roadblock is an obstruction placed across the road. Well, not in this case, especially of barricades. Okay, that's not it. But you get the idea. It's almost like an action condition, something that obstructs progress forward. I was like, hold on, I had to read through all of it.
Something that obstructs progress going forward. I like it.
And I did the same thing. All of a sudden, here I am. I started recording the videos. Things are great. Things are awesome. And I'm like, okay, At the time, I had someone doing the recording of my videos and the editing. So I was at a point where I didn't know how to do them. I think I was scared of doing it. So we got to a point where we didn't record for several months, and there was always, oh, I'm busy, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And through a conversation with my sister, actually, she goes, well, just figure it out and learn how to do it. And I was like, but they said it's hard. So I created those roadblocks, right? So what did I do? I recorded a video, and thank you, YouTube tutorials, I figured out how to edit my own videos. And in fact, before we started this podcast, I had edited my second video because I'm going away on vacation tomorrow. So I wanted to make sure I had videos in place so they can release. So I had created my own roadblock. It wasn't something that was physical, it was mental roadblock. So if anybody can relate to that, I had put my own, like, I was like, stop. I had done that. Nobody did it for me. I had created, I could not do it. So I stopped myself. And then I got out of my own way and figured it out.
So mental roadblock.
Yeah.
Man, I would say that's probably one of the biggest ones that we don't talk about much.
No.
And I'm going to say it.
Say it.
It's the we don't talk about Bruno.
So for those of you who don't understand, when we recorded this last week, it was last week, right? Yeah. I probably had one too many glasses of wine. I'm only on my first, so I'll be funny, but not as funny as I was last time. But the whole thing is like, if you watched Encanto, we don't talk about Bruno because it's the thing you don't talk about.
Yeah.
And how many times do we not, and we'll get to the whole machismo thing in a little bit, but we don't talk about Bruno because we don't talk about these things. Like, I'll share this. I grew up where we didn't talk about, example, mental illness. We didn't talk about roadblocks, quote unquote, because that was just something, oh, no, that's for other people. That's not for you.
Mm-hmm.
What does that even mean? Like, what does it mean?
Dude, it's funny, man. I was thinking of a word, like there's this word that they use for those things. Like, oh, that's not for us. That's like in fairy tales almost, like type thing. That doesn't happen in real life. It's not real. But
that happens to other people. Yeah. I grew up listening to that. Like, well, what do you mean it happens to other people? What does that even mean? Like, dude, like, okay, so we don't talk about Bruno.
I wonder if we can use a little clip of the music there. It's really catchy. I had a hard time with it. So I will bring up, like, for me, dude, several months ago, I was watching my videos that I was doing, and I have a guy who edits for me, and he does a really, really good job. Shout out to Zadie. He does a really good job for me. But the sound quality wasn't what I wanted it to be.
Right.
And the video quality wasn't everything that I wanted it to be. And every time I talk to the Fortress Force, which is what my team is called, my group, my followers, they, everybody says good stuff. But, some of my close friends are like, hey, maybe work on the audio or maybe work on this. And I get advice, and I'm like, you know what? I told them all the time that I would give them the best that I could.
Right.
And so I'm like, maybe I'm not giving the best that I can. So I'm going to save some money up and I'm going to buy a camera. And that took longer than expected.
Those cameras are not cheap. I'll tell you that.
But also maybe I really didn't try as hard because I was like, should I go back? Is what I have to say worthwhile? And these are the things that are not discussed, man, because I suffer with that, right? I suffer with a little bit of the insecurity because I had a dad, and I shared this when I launched my channel. I had a dad who pretty much said I'm not good enough my whole life. I had an older brother who was his golden child, and me, he knew I was a failure. So I'll share this story real quick. It's about a week before high school graduation. I had more than enough credits to graduate. All my classes were good except for one. And every single one of my teachers has said good stuff to my dad, but my English teacher said that if I didn't pass my final with a B or an A, I was not going to graduate on stage. So long story short, this woman would read every day in class, and every day I'd fall asleep because in 7th grade, I took speed reading. So I'd be done with a book in a day or two. And she's reading the same book every day. And I'm like, ah. Anyway, she took points away every day. So I'm the kind that necessarily doesn't need to do homework to know what the deal is. I do good on tests. I just didn't like doing stuff in class. So she took away points. So my dad took 5 other teachers telling him that I'm doing a good job and took this one person, and we're on the way home. And he says to me, I knew you were going to fail. Why couldn't you be more like your brother?
Oh.
So in that conversation, man, I'm tearing, I'm young. I'm like feeling like crap because I'm never good enough for your dad. And I said, you know what, man, I'm going to graduate on stage and you're not going to go. I was like,
you were angry.
I was, man. I'm like, you're not going to go ever, even if there's a fire.
The things we did as kids. Oh, I did my share.
Oh my God. So, dude, lo and behold, man, I purposely didn't answer 2 questions on that final. I got a 98 out of 100.
Nice.
On purpose to prove a point, right? Like, hey, I know what I'm doing. I know her stuff. So graduation day comes and I need a car to get to practice for graduation ceremony. I go to his job. I say, hey, I need the car. Got to go graduate. To this point, I don't know if he knows or not that I'm actually graduating. I don't care. I'm telling him I'm going to go graduate. So what does he do? He gives me the keys, and I said thanks. And I was going to leave like that. Like, I'm not going to give him anything. I get to the car, and I'm like, that's not me.
Yeah.
I'm not like him. So I went back inside, and in front of his coworkers, I said, here, you can go if you want to or not. I don't care. But I'm not like you. So do whatever you want. And I threw it on the counter.
Oh my.
Yeah. And it was the only day that I ever heard my dad say he was proud of me. At the graduation ceremony, I remember when they called my name and he threw his arms up. I saw him as I was walking to the stage, man. It's the only time I remember my dad being proud of me. My whole life. My whole life, dude.
So how old were you?
17 at the time.
And how old are you now?
I'm 36. Thanks for putting that out there.
No, the reason I asked that is because from an outsider looking in, that still left an indelible mark on your mind.
Oh, yeah.
It's still a point where you're like, that's a pain point.
Yeah. And you know what? Even though I forgive him or not, it doesn't mean, dude, scars are there. They're reminders of the past, man. It doesn't go away. You know what I mean? It is what it is. So I say all that to say, that stayed with me, dude. The one figure in my life that's supposed to tell me I'm successful, I can be successful, always told me I wasn't good enough.
Right.
And believe it or not, Dre, that carried with me for a lot of parts of my life where I didn't finish things because I'm like, I'm not going to be good enough anyway. Until, I started talking to a therapist and he's like, do you realize you have certain things that like patterns? And I'm like, oh my God. I didn't. I'm like, oh my God.
It's true though, because if you think about it, those are pain points that happen when you were a certain age. And whether people realize it or not, when things like that happen in your childhood, it's forever ingrained in your mind. Even if you don't think about it, it is back there. And something will happen that it's a trigger moment. And then you're flashback right to that time period. And, I think about it. Because you were 17, you said, right? Hold on, I'll let you finish your story and then I'll share how the roadblocks from our childhood affect us even today.
Yeah. I definitely want you to share, man. For me, it was just coming to that realization moment and making a decision that I'm not going to be a failure ever. And launching my channel was part of the things that helped me. I had already made the decision prior and I had put things in place, but launching the channel was like, you know what? I'm going to help other people and I'm going to be the positive voice that I didn't get ever. I'm going to help motivate. I'm going to help teach. I'm going to help put something out there that somebody can come to and say, hey, you know what? I can do good. That my kids can come watch. My youngest son, Jason, he's big, like he follows me, tells all his friends and stuff about my channel. He's like my biggest cheerleader, right? but this is kind of like my love letter, if you will, for my kids later. Like if something ever happens to me, I want them to see this and say, hey, you know what? Like I always tell my kids, he'll say something sometimes like, oh, I'll never get it. I'm just gonna fail. I'm like, who taught you that? That didn't come from me. I'm like, just because you're not good at something now doesn't mean you can't be good at it. And then I showed him an example, like with a video game that he liked. And he kind of like opened his eyes. And I'm like, so I don't want you ever saying those negative things. I'm like, you put that out there, you're putting that out there for yourself. Don't create those things. So I keep pushing that. I'm like, that's not taught at my house. We don't teach about failure. We teach about growing. We don't do that, period. A failure is just an opportunity to grow more, dude.
True.
That's it.
I usually say it's a lesson to be learned.
That's a good one too.
No.
Good one too. So let's talk about yours.
So growing up, single mother, I didn't really know my dad growing up too much. So it was my mom. She was mom and dad. But I was always, so I grew up in Puerto Rico and then came to the US when I was about 5 or 6, something like that. But I'd always go back and forth. And every time I went back to Puerto Rico, I'd come back to New York and I'd forget how to speak English all over again. So Spanish was my first language. And of course, now I forget how to speak it half the time. Thank God I'm going to Puerto Rico tomorrow. But the whole thing about it is I hit a certain point. I was always musical since I was a little kid. And if anyone knows anything about Puerto Rico, is back in the early 80s, God, I can't believe I'm saying this, but there was a group called Menudo. Young guys, always singing. So I would sing over the phone to my grandparents at the age of 4. So I've always been singing. So fast forward to, it's time to go to high school. I think I'm in 7th grade, maybe the beginning of 8th grade. And I'm starting to discover music, like my musical side. Like, dude, this is fun. This is fantastic. My little cousin wanted to go to LaGuardia School of the Performing Arts in New York City. So she was going to go there. And I asked my mom, I'm like, hey, by the way, I was raised to go to Catholic school my whole life. So structure, strict structure. And when I said I wanted to go, I had my friend Anthony and Jason there. And she looked at me and she goes, why do you want to go there? You have no talent. I was like, did she just say that in front of my friends? Her exact words were, you have no talent.
Wow.
So
I mean,
imagine,
I'm laughing because I can relate to that, right?
a 12-year-old
culture,
kid,
I can relate to that.
right? And
Right.
I'm like, here I am, I'm singing in the house, I'm doing all these things. It totally messed with me throughout my whole life. And I'll share, my mom died when I was 15, but that message stuck with me all through life, even when I started voice lessons at the age of 15. I hadn't done voice lessons before, but my aunt raised me after my mom passed, and we got a couple voice teachers. I think I went to 2 or 3 until I found Katie Agresta. So Katie Agresta, she's still a teacher in New York City, but she was like the teacher for John Bon Jovi at the time, Cyndi Lauper, Annie Lennox, all these people. So I had been working with her, and I'm in my late teens, I'm in my early 20s. I'm starting to sing in some bars. Of course, I do open mics, I do karaoke, I do all these things. And then I get to a point where I meet people in the music industry, and specifically is one person, Nelson Gonzalez, who had worked with Mark Anthony, who probably, I think, still works with him. So we were he got me into a studio with a producer in Long Island, and we did a demo, we did all these things. Beautiful. So he was like, you would sing great doing salsa music. So mind you, I was singing rock and roll throughout my entire life and pop music. So he's like, do salsa, which we didn't talk about this the last time. So this is good. It's happening now. And so we do it. And then the music is done. It's a half step higher than it should be for my voice. So I was like, no worries about it, because I can, change the key and do all these things. But then the doubt kicked in. Mm-hmm. Mind you, I would go meet with DJs, producers at like 1 a.m, 2 a.m, meet them in clubs, do all these different things. And they're like, okay, dudes, they would literally tell me, sing on the spot. So I was always vocalized. I was warmed up. I didn't drink alcohol because it would hinder my vocal abilities. So, you know, I was like, whatever, I'm ready, let's go. They took me to one open mic night. This was in Washington Heights at the time. And it was a duet of Vivir lo Nuestro, which is Mark Anthony and La India. So my friend, she was a great singer. And she was like, do this with me. And I'm like, I had 2 or 3 drinks at this point. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I was nervous. There was like 2,000 people in this place.
Oh,
so I was like, I'm not doing it. So she put my name in anyway. And I ended up doing it, and we got a standing ovation for it. And that was when I won't mention who they were, but they were like, let's go into the studio together. Let's work a little bit. Let's see what you can do. So we did these great demos, which I still have. We took some music from, I think it's Colombia, a Colombian singer, and we turned them into salsa tunes. And in fact, one of those, La India just released, I think a year or 2 ago, because I never released it.
No.
I heard La India singing the song. Now, this is not a common song. It is a folk song. I don't know where it's from though, but it's a folk singer. So I know because of the network that we were in, that La India probably got it from Nelson or from Gazoo, the producer, or from somewhere in that circle or that triangle of people, because it's a very tight-knit circle. But it's not a song that it's common. So when I heard her sing it, I don't know where I was devastated. I was crushed because I'm like, that was my song. Dude, I didn't share that with you the last time.
No, you did not. That's a huge one.
I heard her singing it. I was in my car listening to Sirius some station, I don't remember. And the song came on and Ivan looked at me. He goes, why did you just turn pale? Tears ran down my face because that was my song to sing. And I didn't do it, so she did. And of course, it did not sound as good as my version, but you know, let truth be known, I had a better version, damn it. But she was singing my song, and it's not a common song. Unless you know who this folk singer is, you would never know. But she released it, because I didn't.
I'm just gonna sell something to the audience right now. Dre had not sung in I don't know how many years, and the first night I met this dude, I got him to belt out Mark Anthony music with me in Disney.
In Disney, at a bar, at like 1 o'clock in the morning.
And we were getting down singing Mark Anthony songs. It was sick.
And people are looking at us like, what is wrong with these fools? But it tie it back to the roadblocks. So just to childhood trauma, it was my mother's voice going, you're not good enough. That literally sabotaged my success.
Man, that pisses me off, dude. You know what I mean? Like, because I feel you, bro. Like, I don't know how many things I didn't start or didn't do because I'm like, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I'll tell you, like at the time when I was singing, I was 155 pounds. I was in the gym 4 to 5 days a week. I had a trainer. Like, I was like, I loved it. I thrived on the excitement, the energy, because I knew in order to perform, you had to have the whole package. And to me, the whole package was mind, body, spirit. I had to be in line. I had the vocals, my voice teacher every week religiously for lessons. Then there was the practicing at home. I didn't go out. I was like, I had to exercise, I had to practice, I had to vocalize on a daily basis. Sometimes I would vocalize before I went to work early in the morning just to keep the vocals in shape when I came home. And the moment that the self-sabotage kicked in, I allowed myself to gain an obscene amount of weight. Oh. And the sad part is, and I'll share this, is when I would say probably 6 to 9 months after I had just pulled away, my audio engineer came to my house in Jersey City, where I had a condo at the time. And sadly, this was a scenario where it just went south. I was not willing to engage in certain types of behavior or situations sexually And because I
Sure.
didn't go forth with that, I was shunned and blacklisted. Nobody wanted to talk to me after that point. So I completely walked away from the music industry after that scenario. And I did not share this with you the last time.
That's a huge thing to discuss, dude.
You want to talk about roadblocks and things that have stopped me over the years? Well, that's a really big one. Because I wouldn't sleep with someone. They completely blacklisted me. Yeah, figure that shit out. Oops, sorry, people. Yeah.
This is a free space.
Yeah. So it went from my mom's voice saying you're not good enough to then, because I wouldn't sleep with someone, that then they told everybody I wasn't good enough. And I completely and that was the moment I pulled completely away from the music industry and I took a whole different path.
And that probably even added to what your mom said.
Oh, you have no idea. That totally, like, it's, my favorite word is fakakt, because it's just a generic word that's made up, fakakt.
What is that? I've never heard
It's
that,
like,
dude.
just fakakt. I'm gonna put a t-shirt that says fakakt.
It's like worse than
It's just, it's like, you know, food word fucked up beyond all recognition. It's fakakt, okay? It's just fakakt.
I love that, dude.
But that's what happened. It was not only my mother's voice, but it was the fact that I wouldn't sleep with somebody. And then the self-doubt brought in, and I literally shut down. I shut down. And I walked away from the music industry at 26 years old. And I had all the cards, everything was aligning. The I's were dotted, the T's were crossed. I had just gotten an entertainment attorney. I had found all these different things, because I know you need an attorney in order to make things happen, because they need to read the contracts. You know, I had a contract signed with the producer for the demo, and he was like, oh, but I don't sign these things. I'm like, oh, for me, you will, because it was an NDA, and it was an exclusive thing, but obviously it doesn't matter because it expired, hence why La India probably recorded that song. But it's the point where you have all these things, and then I created the roadblocks to stop me from progressing forward.
That stemmed from one place.
From one place. You're not good enough.
God.
Talk about some stuff.
Bro, you got my mind churning right now, dude. We're going on a different path this time. And I like it.
But listen, that's the whole point of these conversations, because we can, you know, roadblocks are, they're reality for many of us. Yeah. And our definition of roadblock, I read you what dictionary.com said, but what we perceive in our brain can sometimes literally take us on different paths. And I took an entirely different path where I had no debt. I had like $20,000 in student loans. And then I decided, because I wasn't following music, I was going to go culinary, which added a gazillion millions of dollars, not millions, but just add like a lot of money, over $150,000 in loans, in order to do all these things. And thankfully, you know, we're growing our channel, we're doing our things, but what would have happened if I just hadn't let that stop me? It would be a whole different trajectory today. And this is before Ricky Martin came out with his music in 1999. This is before the Puerto Rican, the Spanish invasion with Enrique Iglesias, Jennifer Lopez, all in 1999, because I was doing this, and it was 1995 and 96. And this is the music that we literally had it. It was down to, like, I still have the demo. I just don't have my vocals on it. The music is like hot. People are like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. And
I need to hear these songs. Because
yeah, they're incredible.
But I'm gonna tell you something though, dude. This opens up like some wounds for me, dude. Because I had a band. It was Christian music, but we did like Latin jazz, mashups, and a little bit of rock in there, right? So it was like mashups with really good stuff. I wrote almost every single song. I wrote all my own songs. I added the music to it, and I was gonna pursue it, dude. But I was like, what if I'm not good enough?
That's that little moment of self-doubt that kills every dream.
And I didn't pursue music either, because I'm like, I always kept going, there's somebody that's better than me.
Do you know how long it took me to hear myself on a recording without cringing?
Bro, you're bringing up some big feelings right now, dude. because that was my dad in the back of my head, and I didn't pursue music, dude. And I'm not going to say that I was incredible, dude, but I could carry a tune.
Yeah, you can.
And I write music, dude. I write songs and the accompanying music. There's not a lot of people that can do that. There are people that can write the lyrics, and there are people that add the music. There's very few that do both and can sing their own stuff. You know what I'm saying? And I played several instruments. Bro, you're bringing us some bad stuff right now.
So for those of you who are listening, when we originally did this recording, what we're talking about right now wasn't even a thought. Like, it wasn't even like, I took a whole different, like, that other conversation, which maybe I will release it as a podcast, because
I think we should release it as a podcast
for people
now
to
that
hear.
We have this as a preface to that.
Yeah, this is, the whole, and again, roadblocks, because some roadblocks are created in our own minds. We put those barriers, and for us, it sounds like it really stemmed from childhood, from a lot of the traumas that you heard from your father, I heard from my mother. And later on, it took my mom dying for me to speak to a lot of her friends, where she was friends with a lot of artists, and they were starving artists. So the reason she didn't want me to follow that path is because she thought I was going to be like them, starving artists. Of course, this is years and years and years and years later to learning this, but it made sense in her mind to kill my dream.
God dang, dude.
So imagine
we can watch What If play out is on Disney Plus.
So, and there are moments where, so don't judge me, people. Just don't judge me what I'm about to say. But over the last few days, Ivan and I watched Marry Me, Jennifer Lopez's quote unquote rom-com.
I loved it.
I loved it. One, we needed something happy because the world is just a crazy place.
Hey, I'm a hopeless romantic, dude. So
that's me too.
My wife loves it.
I heard the soundtrack and people are like, oh, the song sucks, this, that, and the other. But if you watch the movie, the soundtrack and the songs go hand in hand with different scenes and things like that. I'm still playing it in my car. But I think about, she was the fly girl in Living Color, and music wasn't even anything on her radar until she did the movie Selena. She was the first Latina artist to make $1 million doing a movie. So she broke barriers that way. The glass ceiling was shattered with that. But then it went on. Ricky Martin came out, Enrique Iglesias, and all these other people. And during that time, I would still go to the bars. I'd still sing. And I went to a Mark Anthony concert. It was at a gay bar called Crash in Queens. And it was his second album, had just come out. La India had played there a couple weeks before, but she was so cooked out of her mind. She sang the same song 3 times and still messed it up. This is a true story, just from my experience. Don't even get me started on that one. But the Mark Anthony concert, there was like 20 of us, but I was singing just as loudly as he was. And there were more people looking at me, recording me, than they were him at the time. Because I love Mark. Mark is fantastic. And
Mark's
that
one
was
of my favorites.
Yeah, because that was, at that time, he was changing lives, changing, Spanish music was back at the forefront. Salsa music in the 70s was it. And here we are in 1999 and 2000, and just the whole world changed. It was his second or third Spanish album, and then he did his English album, which was a crossover album. And I was like, wow, that could have been me as a part of that group.
Man, dude. It's funny, my aunt got me into Mark Anthony.
Yeah.
Because I grew up where I couldn't listen to any music. Very religious household.
You were in the Christian music.
I was in the Christian music, which hence why I had a Christian band, right?
Yeah.
But man, when I heard Mark, and it's funny because in junior high and high school, they used to call me Mark. When I was skinnier, I looked like him.
Well, we were all skinny once upon a time.
and back in the day before the deep voice, I was able to belt it out like Mark, man, but I can't get it anymore. That's man, that dude.
I'm sorry, I just had a flashback because you said that, and I know this. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I remember walking down Broadway in New York City, and I walked into, I forgot, I think it was a bank on 73rd or 74th and Broadway. And at the time, my friend DJ, she was like my bodyguard. And literally, people must have thought I was a celebrity because I was, again, super skinny. I had this black full leather jacket. It was late fall. I was working in a fashion house at the time, so I got a lot of designer clothes pretty much for free. And sunglasses, the whole bit, full, eyebrows were done just like they are now. Of course, I didn't have Botox at the time because I was young. There's Botox now.
See, you really do Botox?
Oh yeah, my sister got it for me for Christmas. I only had 8 needles. That's all I needed. See, look, I can't. Nothing moves. Sorry, podcasters. You have to see the YouTube video to see me trying to raise my eyebrows, but nothing moves on my forehead.
Man, I don't know what I would do if I couldn't do The Rock.
Oh no, you can still. No, maybe not.
Yeah, you gotta go up there to get The Rock eyebrow.
Yeah, but it was an experience. It was totally an experience. I was in the mindset that I was going to be a famous performer. I was going to be a musician.
Bro, if I was in your spot, I would have been in that same mindset.
Yeah.
If I was in your spot, I would have been in that same mindset. You were there. You were talking to attorneys and stuff, man.
Yeah. We were at that point where it's like, let's start shopping you around. Let's get this demo finished. Let's do these things. Nelson Gonzalez is the most amazing human on the face of the earth because I went to, the first time I went to go sing in a studio in Jersey City. I'm a rock singer, people. Like, I sang rock and roll. And he's wanting me to go into and do all these different things. And I'm like, huh? I had never had monitors or headphones on. So I didn't understand what it was like to have headphones on and then sing into a mic and hear different things and then have music playing in one ear and then so it was a whole learning curve. Like, I still walk around with my in-ears. I use them when I fly because it just zones everybody out and I have to listen.
Yeah, cuts it out. Nonsense. Yeah, in-ears are the best, dude.
And yeah, dude, I got stories for you.
Bro, it's funny because I didn't realize how much we can connect on the music side. I wasn't at your level, but I did a lot of sound engineering in church.
Oh.
And I sang in the church and I was the director of praise and worship and stuff. So although it's not exactly the same, there are a lot of similarities, dude. So wow, man, that's super cool. That is something else, man.
So let me change the topic a little bit because we can talk about music for like 17,000 hours.
Yeah.
So we both grew up in a religious household. I was brought up strict Catholic. In fact, my aunts and uncles had the parishioners, the priests, bishops used to come to our home. We've gone to bishops being ordained in different cities and things of that nature. So let me pull up the definition of machismo. And I want to talk about how that played into our lives. Because I don't think this is spoken about enough. Because for us, I'll tell you what the definition according to dictionary.com. Listen, I got to cite the sources. It says machismo is a strong or exaggerated sense of manliness, an assumptive attitude that virility, courage, strength, and entitlement to dominate are attributes of masculinity. So what is that?
The super uber exaggerated manly man.
Yeah. So what does that mean?
I think for us, and you can add to it if you think I'm wrong, but in the Hispanic household, it's you have to be the epitome of man.
Yeah.
You don't have feelings, you don't have emotions, you don't get tired. If you do, people don't see that side of you. You don't show that to the world nor to your family. Period.
We don't talk about Bruno.
Exactly. We don't talk about Bruno. It's the unspoken thing. There are no emotions. There is no mental illness, dude. And so that in itself creates roadblocks. Because I'm gonna tell you something, man. And I'm glad you brought us back here. So let's bring it back just a little bit. We're talking about roadblocks. And one of the biggest things that we just discussed is mental illness. But what we don't talk about even more is mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that can be done to help you with mental illness. So having medication for mental illness was always the biggest stigma for me. You don't take medicine. You don't.
For you, it was medicine. For me, I remember growing up, my grandmother was like, she would say, I would say, I feel depressed. And they're like, oh, no, 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 you can't feel that. You're just tired.
Oh yeah. Well, my parents would say, that's the devil.
Oh, that's even worse.
I'm talking about as I grew up and I understood the mental illness is a thing, I couldn't even do medicine because you don't do medicine. You're a man. Tough it out. Figure it out. You know what I'm
Thank
saying?
you for saying that, because that's what I grew up with. It's like, oh, that's just whatever. It'll all work itself out. Just push it to the side. We don't talk about those things.
Push it to the side. Push it to the side. It'll go away. So, some miraculous way, the shitty thing that you're feeling right now will go away. I didn't realize there was a definition for what was actually happening until I went to go talk to somebody.
I was just going to ask you, when did you realize that it wasn't something you could push to the side, that it was something that you actually needed to seek out? And listen, for those of you listening, it is okay if you need guidance and you need help. There's betterhelp.com, and there's, what's the other one? There's a few of them. We can put them out there in the comments, but seek out help. There's nothing wrong with seeking advice and having somebody to talk to.
Absolutely not. Let me just say this to the men listening right now of all races, because if anything that I've experienced in my few 36 years of life that Dre so wonderfully put out there for everybody when he asked me.
You could be my child.
But having friends from different cultures and really immersing myself in diversity, I just come to realize it's not just a Hispanic thing. Mm-hmm. It's not just the Latino culture. It's everywhere. I have African-American friends who have gone through similar types of things. It's not called machismo for them, but it's the unspoken rules. And let me just listen, this is not just for men, but for the men, Hispanic men and men from other cultures. And even if you're a woman and you experience something like this, it is okay to seek help. And it is okay to not be okay. That's one of the things that I wrote when I'm trying to write this book that I'm working on for years. But one of the biggest things that I have is it's okay not to be okay, and own it. I'm not okay, and it's okay to seek help. Because if you don't, guys, listen to me. You may blow up and it may be the right time, or you may be thinking about bad decisions. And that's, man.
So when did you realize it was time? Because I'll share my story when you finish.
Yeah. Please. My wife pretty much pointed it out for me. And I think that's, it's not a marriage counseling session right now, but communication is key, right? Everybody says like communication. But your partner in life that you pick, you got to be able to talk, right? And you got to be willing to accept stuff without getting ass hurt about stuff. Real talk.
Did you just say ass hurt?
Yeah, butt hurt. I just feel like it's a lot, there's some people that just take things so rough, and it's like, it's not that serious. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you got to be willing to just listen, especially with the person that you should be able to be the most vulnerable with. Right. So she just said to me, she goes, babe, there's something up. She goes, there's nothing wrong with talking to somebody. She goes, what is it going to hurt you? She goes, that person doesn't know you. When you leave, they're not going to talk to you. They have whatever the code of silence or something. I don't know if that's what it's called. But she's like, just go talk to somebody and just see what they say. And I'll tell you something, man. It was really cool to understand. Listen, people think therapy is like getting brainwashed and stuff, and it's the complete opposite of that. A therapist is there to help you clear out your own thoughts, because you can't see past your own thoughts sometimes.
Yeah, they help you make sense of it all.
Yeah, and that was a big deal. And so when she finally said that to me, I knew it was serious at that point, because if she got to the point where she's like, hey, something's off, then I knew something was off, right? Because I always downplay things. I'm the kind of guy who doesn't even go to the hospital. If my leg is cut in half, I'll just spray Windex on it, like in my Greek wedding. You know what I'm saying?
Or if you grew up like me in Puerto Rico, we put Vicks on everything.
Vicks on everything too, yeah. So, but you know what I'm saying though? Like I didn't look for help. I didn't do that kind of stuff, And so when she said it to me, I realized something's up. So I went. And the good part is this guy and you explain this better than I do, but he referred me to a psychiatrist and just explained,
So you
hey,
saw a psychologist
I saw a
first.
psychologist therapist, yeah. And then he referred me to see a therapist because there are certain medications that just help bring your body back. Because guess what? If you cut your hand, you put Neosporin and you put a Band-Aid on it.
Mhm.
If you have a headache, you take ibuprofen. If you have a backache, you take something. Your brain is no different than that, but we have this stigma out there that says you don't do that stuff. We don't talk about Bruno, right? We should just label this video, we don't talk about Bruno.
We don't talk about Bruno.
So, dude, I went through 4 or 5 different therapists before I found my therapist that I like. And
Good
then
that you did.
and then it took me like a good 3 months before I decided to talk to a psychiatrist for medication, because I, even though it was explained to me and the whole brain factor was explained to me, the muscle and the, you know, all the things that go, all the science behind why it works, man, I couldn't do it because the machismo thing that I grew up with, and also the we don't talk about Bruno thing,
Mhm.
didn't let me go do that. Like,
Yeah.
dude, I'm not gonna lie to you, man. Right now in the back of my head, I'm like, oh my God, I'm talking about this stuff right now. This is gonna be on the internet. Oh my God. Like,
He's
man,
like,
what's
who's
gonna
gonna
happen?
see this?
Yeah. And so, and you know what, dude, to be honest with you, I'm at the point where it's like, see it whoever needs to, because I'd rather it help one person than the 5 people that may talk bad about me.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. Like, we're doing this stuff. We've talked about this several times. We're putting our stuff out there to help people out. Your
Yeah.
cooking channel is not just about cooking channels,
Mhm.
right? It's not just about cooking. It's about the memories. But
Yeah.
not just that, dude. Understand the impact of what you're doing. Because I said this to you last time, I'm gonna say it to you right now. When I watch you and how much you post, it's very motivating to me to
Thank you.
keep doing stuff, man. Because you never look down when you're doing your stuff. You're so freaking excited. And I'm like, man, you know, and it just makes me excited. So I'm like, dude, I gotta keep doing it, because when I do my videos, I'm fucking excited. Excuse the
Yeah.
French, but I am, dude. I love doing my videos. I love talking with people and stuff. I went through a moment where I'm like, maybe I'm not good enough. I went through a moment where I bought the camera and everything, and I still didn't do it because I'm like, nobody wants to hear from me. I was going through a dark moment. I called you. I'm like, dude,
I
I'm
know.
not feeling good right now. I don't want to do it. Why?
And what did I tell you?
You said this is what people.
This is when you need to do it most.
There you go. And it still took me what, like a month after that before I
It's still about a month, almost 6 weeks.
before I could do it. But it's not like I didn't hear it, but it was just, there was just so many roadblocks that I created already that made it tough, man. But I will say spousal support was probably the biggest thing that helped me get to that point, because now I am on some things that help me be normal, that help me just think through and realize that's the OCD right now, or that's the depression. It's not real in a sense, right? Like, you're okay. Life is going to continue. You don't need to freak out, you know? So that was what it was for me, man. So let's hear from Dre.
For me, I was crazy. In my late teens, my early 20s, I was a partier. No drugs involved, but a lot of risque behavior. So there was a lot of ups and downs, and I would be all excited. I'd be super euphoric, and then I'd be suppressed, and then excited again. And I'm like, oh, I'm sad. So I realized that the up and down. And I decided, I'm like, something is wrong. I had seen a psychologist throughout my college years. I'll just say her last name, but it was Oluni. So I love it. She truly helped me overcome a lot of stuff, especially after my mom died, and understanding all those things, having an absent father. Although my dad and I, before he died, we made up and we lived together and all that stuff. But it was in my adult years, that was a psychologist. I realized that I needed something more probably when I turned 25. And I went to see a psychiatrist. And when I was diagnosed, so I was diagnosed, I can't remember what type of bipolar, but I was actually diagnosed as bipolar. And then he pulls out his it looks like a freaking encyclopedia. I think it was the DSM. And he's literally reading me my diagnosis. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's me.
That's how mine was with my psychiatrist. But do me a favor, before you continue, can you explain why a psychiatrist and why a psychologist?
So a psychologist was more of someone to talk to help me figure things out and sort through feelings and emotions, where a psychiatrist does a lot more medication management. At least for me, that's what it was. So I went to see a psychiatrist because we realized that there was an imbalance somewhere. It's like, how can we fix this? So when I went to, my psychiatrist in New York City, Dr. Rubin, I love him, my favorite little Jewish man. And literally, I would say, like, normally psychiatrists, in my personal experience, you go in, you're in and out in 15 minutes. I'd be in there for an hour. Like, he'd have to push appointments to the side. He literally helped me. So he was both psychiatrist and a psychologist at the same time, working through things. But when he prescribed medication for me, first of all, I was very skeptical and I was nervous. And I was like, what is this going to do to me? Whatever. I went ahead and did it. And it literally stabilized me.
Man,
I gained 30 pounds in the first 3 months, maybe 40.
Yeah.
Because that was a side effect. And he warned me, but I was stable. I wasn't this up and down, up and down, up and down, this constant roller coaster of emotions. And my quote unquote risque behavior had stopped. Of course, that was a side effect as well, but we're not going to go there today. But this is a reality. So here I come from growing up and realizing that, you can't say certain things. We don't talk about Bruno because that's just not what we talk about growing up in our Hispanic households. But here we are years and years later into our adult lives, and we're realizing that all of that were shenanigans because we literally needed the help. And not only did we need the help, but we needed that medication management for us. And we're only speaking about our personal experiences. If you feel you need something additional, please seek out professional help. And don't be afraid of going to a professional. It sounds scary. People were like, oh, well, only crazy people. That's just nonsense. It's not crazy people, although I am a little touched from time to time. But that's another story.
I can't with you sometimes, man.
I'm like, well, it's the truth. Listen, I'm a very interesting human. We've been through a lot in life.
I'll give you that. Yeah. Listen, man. There's nothing that you're saying that's incorrect, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Like it's important that people know they can seek help. What I think is important for our generation and the generations to come is for people to normalize mental health, to realize listen, do you know that some of the wealthiest people in the world speak to a therapist on a regular basis?
I wish I had a therapist on speed dial.
It is a practice of the wealthy to speak to a therapist on a consistent basis to have good thought patterns. And for us, it was put out as you don't do that. No, bad job. Nope.
It's like, we just man up.
Yeah, just man up. And it's like,
and what does that even mean? Like, what does that even mean? But that goes along with that whole machismo mentality that we just don't talk about those things.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, man, I still suffer with that now because, my wife's got to pry some things out of me sometimes because, like, I'm not trying to bring anything additional home because I'm supposed to take care of my family. But I get stressed out, man. It gets rough sometimes.
I know. I get your text messages. I can read between the lines.
Like life is not always every day is beautiful. There are some stressful days, and I'm allowed to have those days, but sometimes I don't allow myself, and those things add up, and it's like, again, that's why spousal support is good, because my wife is like, listen, she'll sometimes tell me, listen, you're cranky butt, you need to go do something to relax.
So it's funny you say that, because when I have my moments, Ivan will be like, do you need a glass of wine? Like, not for nothing, but for Ivan to be like, I think you need a glass of wine to mellow out. Yeah. He can tell that my stress levels are super high.
Yeah.
And not that wine is the answer. It's just my answer. The fermented grape is my friend.
Yes.
And but normally what I do, and I've learned over the years, is the art of journaling. Like, all of these red books behind me are journals. These are empty, but all of these white ones next to it are filled. And all of these, where are they? These black notebooks. This is like the notebooks you buy them at Staples for 25 cents when it's back to school, are all filled. Like I've got journals dating back to 1993.
Dang, dude. I just recently started journaling, dude. And it's very, very good. Actually, that brings up a good kind of like bring it back to the roadblocks discussion. So I started journaling a couple of months ago on my way to a vacation. I bought a journal just before, and I'm like, you know what? When we're waiting, because we're gonna have a big layover, I'll start writing. Started writing, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna write ideas of what I want to talk about in my videos and everything. And then I was like, you know what? I got into the topic of roadblocks, and I started reading and investigating. And I found it very interesting, dude, that roadblocks were not simply associated with a stopping point. They were purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
So there could be a roadblock that stops you from going into a city. So what they do, there are certain cities that are coastal, and they lift up the bridges and they block out a couple of blocks even before that in case it's going to flood, so that nobody can get into a place that will be damaged. So if you're there, you have a risk of loss of life. Now listen to me, dude. I didn't say this in the last video. I didn't say this in the last video, but I started thinking about it after. Okay, think about this loss of life concept. This is where the old youth pastor preacher Josh is coming out right now. Well, no. listen. That's a key factor for me on the roadblocks, right? Think about this. If a roadblock serves a purpose, and I said this before, it doesn't mean stop here. It means find another way. But in some cases, it means do not cross here, because if you do, there will be loss of life. Let me clarify why I bring that up and how this comes to full circle for me. If you are trying to achieve something and the way that you're going for it could cause you loss of life, and I'm not talking about physical life where you're going to die, the loss of life to the dream, to the goal, to the achievement that you want this is not the right way. Sometimes the roadblock is meant for you to analyze, because roadblocks require you to stop. And from there, you have to figure out your next trajectory. What does a GPS do? When the road is blocked, it says recalculating. It takes a minute to think. So I will tell anybody listening right now and watching, when you have a roadblock, do you give yourself the moment to think, or do you just go? Because if you just go, I'm gonna tell you something. You're not taking the time to realize, is this a roadblock to help me or to hurt me? Because if I can, like think about these people that play chess. They think 5, 6, 7, 8 moves ahead. We need to think that way in the game of life. And sometimes these roadblocks are truly there to help us. And listen, there have been plenty of us that this has happened to. A roadblock came and we still pushed to pursue it that same way, even though everything was telling you to stop and not go there. And what you did is you ended up in a coastal town, and the tsunami hit and you got caught up and the dream died. That's a big deal, dude.
So I think that's a perfect moment for us to stop.
Okay.
Because what I want to ask is, those of you who are listening to this, is drop in the comments and let us know what your thoughts are on your roadblocks. We're going to continue this in a part 2.
Okay.
Because there's a lot more for us to talk about. But I want you to think back to everything that we've discussed. Because for us, we literally went into places that we did not discuss the last time. But the whole notion of roadblocks, the idea of growing up for us in a Hispanic household with that whole machismo mentality, and how that created a whole different, what's the word I want to use? It's like a whole different echelon. There we go. It's like it was a whole different world for us to not pursue our dreams because of those prior traumas. That's a big deal to even talk about here. It's a lot. It took me years of therapy to be okay to talk about this stuff now. But I'm grateful to the idea of having therapy and being able to have somebody to talk to. Like, listen, I'm an open book. I have no problems discussing this with anyone, which is why I was game to say, let's just talk about this, and it is what it is. I hope that it helps people.
Yeah.
You know, there are resources out there. Don't think that you're alone. But I think when we come back, what would you like to see us continue to talk about, or what would you want us to talk about? Because I think it's important to realize that, 1, we're an open book. 2, this is great dialogue. 2, and I'm putting 3 fingers up. Ooh, it's been a long day.
I was waiting for the 3rd one.
And 3, it's like, I want you, that's the whole notion of Dre's table, is this is a safe space. And if this is something, and don't comment, but listen, let this help you to realize that you're not alone in the journey, and the journey is ever changing. It's never going to be just the way it is. And that's that. So it's about to stop. But yeah.
Let me say my outro for the Fortress Force.
That was perfect.
So to the Fortress Force, thank you guys for being on the video. This is the first time me doing a vlog like this, and this is a longer video than I've ever done. But I think you'll find some really good value in it, and we'll also do the part 2. We'll record the part 2 when we do it with Dre for the podcast as well. But listen, if I were to say anything to you guys, you heard a lot of good commentary and good advice from Dre. But if I were to say anything, it's just to speak up. If you don't want to go to a therapist, talk to somebody. But let me just tell you to be careful about who you speak to, because not everybody's looking for your good. So when you have somebody that you can trust truthfully, speak up. Because I saw a thing once, and I said it to a close friend of mine once: I would rather hear about your problems than find out about your death. And that's a very serious thing for me to say to you guys, but understand how much trauma, how much depression, how much mental illness can impact and hinder people, and the decisions that you make impact others as well. So talking makes a big difference. I told Dre once, I'm like, dude, I don't need you to try to figure out what's wrong with me. I just need you to let me tell you that I'm going through a dark moment right now. Just saying those words, literally, I'm going through a dark moment, is a big help. And it's just a big, man, I don't know how to describe it, but it's just like a weight lifted when I get to say those words to somebody who's not going to judge me, and is just going to hear me saying those words and say, okay, I'm here for you, whatever you need.
And for those of you listening, there are a lot of prevention hotlines. We'll have to make sure we put it in the notes, so that way it's available to everybody. But you're never alone. There's always a resource. Don't feel that you're alone. Reach out. And that's where the conversation starts.
Yeah, agreed.
Cool beans.
So thank you, everybody. Thank you to the Fortress Force. And as always, stay strong, stay fortified, and stay in a fortress state of mind.
You say fortified, and I'm like, I just see Superman. I'm trying. He's trying to be serious, people. Here I come. Like, I see the Fortress of Solitude.
You know, I'm a big Superman fan. But
told y'all I'm touched. Okay, but no, thank you everybody for listening, and we look forward to the next episode.
Yeah, take care, everybody.